I know it's not the most popular film in the world, and in terms of sequels, it's not the strongest, but I have a soft spot for Legally Blondes. This is the 2009 film, which obviously follows on from Legally Blonde and Legally Blonde 2, both of which, particularly the first one, very popular, successful films. This one has 3.7 out of 10 on IMDb across 5,000 reviews. To be honest, that's a lot more reviews than I was expecting. But obviously that's not a strong rating. But I just like it because it's easy to watch, it's comfortable, it's pink, and I've always said this, if there's a colour palette that heavily involves shades of pink, for some reason my eyes just get drawn to it. And obviously we are dealing with a pretty simple plot as well, but it's interesting. So I'll read the description from IMDb. And this says, moving from England to California, the youngest cousins of Elle Woods must defend themselves when their school's reigning forces turn on the girls and try to frame them for a crime. Sounds intense. It's not that intense. But I kind of like the fact that there's a bit of reversal here, almost. So the film's directed by Savage Steve Holland, and as the description said, they're moving from England to California. Quite often it's the other way on. For example, films like Wild Child. They take the American and put them into an English boarding school. And I love that. But it's the other way on here. And I thought that was just a little bit interesting and something that I wasn't expecting. So Annie and Izzy Woods, played by Millie and Becky Rosso, move to California, and obviously life's very different. They are they're very much mini versions of Elle Woods. You know, they are from wealth, they are into fashion. They're not stuck up, they're just maybe naive is the word that I think is the best one to describe them. And obviously people are going to look at them as outsiders and judge them quite a bit. And the narrative development, in terms of the key plot points, I think it's pretty predictable for this kind of film. This is certainly more of a preteen film than it is, say, an adult film. Like Legally Blonde appeals to all ages. I feel this is definitely more of the kind of thing you'd see on like Disney Channel and things. Not necessarily a bad thing, but just, you know, something to bear in mind. But I really like it. The narrative is easy, it is predictable, but there's a comfort in that. It very much follows the blueprint for what I would have expected. The girls are interesting enough characters. They're not carbon copies of one another. They each have their own personalities, which sounds obvious, but when you're dealing with characters like the Woods sisters, you know, a lot of films can kind of take them and make them clones of one another, and it never worked. It's always dull. Not the case here. I think the character development's pretty good. The costumes, great. The set designs are brilliant. Visually, it's a very appealing film. I really like the visual aspect. The narrative is fine. Obviously, the whole trying to frame them for a crime sounds dramatic. It's obviously not that intense, but it's good fun. It's pretty predictable, but not necessarily a bad thing. If you liked Legally Blonde, I'd say definitely give this a go, just for fun. It's not as shocking or as powerful as Legally Blonde, but it's a slightly more child-friendly version that's very relaxing, easy to watch, and still retaining the qualities that makes Legally Blonde good. I wouldn't give it a 3.7. I think that's a pretty poor rating. I'd maybe give it a 5.5. It's certainly not a bad film, and one that I would say give it a chance and let me know what you think. Legally Blondes is pretty decent.